Welcome to the Lou Riley Live Show, a podcast about health, wellness, motivation, and success. Now, here's your host, Mr. Lou Riley.
Hello, good folks. This is Lou Riley coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee with another episode of the Lou Riley Live Show. Today, I'm going to share with you, and before we do that, tell you what, let's do a little housekeeping. If you have not, make sure you follow me on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, all at Lou Riley Live. That's one word scrunched together. Lou Riley Live. Please make sure you're following me there. If you have not, please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes. You can simply type in Lou Riley Live in the search window in your iTunes application on your phone or on your desktop, laptop, or what have you, and you can locate my podcast there. Please subscribe. If you're so inclined, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think of my show. Also, you can click that like button so I can get some love on Facebook where that's concerned as well. So with that being said, let me go into the final portion of my presentation on those 4 things that keep us from becoming successful. And again, I'm borrowing in part from Paulo Coelho's book, The Alchemist, and I'm inside the introduction. And I'm just going to read sort of verbatim and share some of my thoughts and comments from that point. And maybe I'll move into, based on how much time that takes, I'll move into a separate thought, although connected, as well to fill out what I'm doing here with this podcast in today's episode. But let me go ahead and get into this. It says that the 4th obstacle that we face, once we've overcome all those other things, is simply a fear of realizing that dream that we fought for all of our lives. It was Oscar Wilde who said that each man kills the thing that he loves. And this is true. The mere possibility of getting what we want fills the soul of the ordinary person with guilt. We look around at those who have failed to get what they want and feel that we do not deserve to get what we want either. We forget about all the obstacles we overcame, all the suffering we endured, all the things we had to give up in order to get this far. Have you ever known somebody who's been following their passion, who's inside their personal calling, who's taken steps to finally realize their dreams, and at the last minute they commit a series of stupid mistakes, and they wind up never reaching their goal when it was only a step away? You see, this is the most dangerous of the obstacles because it sort of has this saintly aura about it, renouncing joy and conquest. But if you believe yourself worthy of the things that you fought so hard to get, then you become an instrument of God. You will help the soul of the world, and you understand why you are here. And is that not one of our purposes, to realize why we are here? How many of you know a person that has fought long and hard, who's been on that road to success, and everything you know about the person has to do with them becoming successful, and right when they're on the cusp of achieving that, a strange set of events happen? Let me frame that in a couple of different ways. One of my first thoughts is my elementary school principal, Wheeler Hughes, at Shakora Elementary. I think the address is 1900 Success Street in North Charleston, South Carolina. But anyway, Mr. Hughes, and I think I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again if you haven't heard it. I had a classmate, young lady named Donna. Can't remember her last name. But Donna had some good days, had some bad days. Looking back now, I got a whole different appreciation for how a lot of people's behaviors came into play, or why they came into play, having become a therapist and practiced at some point in time in my career or in my life when I was doing that thing. Got a whole different appreciation for why children act out. But Donna had, on one hand, done something great, then turned around and got into trouble And I guess it touched Mr. Hughes so badly or so much until he got on the intercom and he told the story about a cow who gave a good bucket of milk. And once whoever was milking the cow was done and had that good bucket of milk, the cow kicked the milk over. You know, you've come so close to doing what you're supposed to do, to fulfilling your purpose, and at the last minute, you sabotage things. How many relationships, let's be honest, you don't have to tell me, but tell it to yourself. How many of you sabotage relationships because you don't feel like you're worthy, like you're good enough to have the thing that you've been wanting? How many of us do that? Many is the answer. And why it's because of fear. It's because of fear. And as I reflect on the text I just read, in the sense of a relationship, many of you have friends who are quick to tell you why and how and tell you that a relationship is, there are no good guys out there. There are no good women out there. Relationships are a waste of time. Forget those things and focus on your money. Make your money. Get paid. You can buy happiness, or you may be single, but you be single inside a big house, or you be single inside a luxury vehicle, or you be single, but you be able to vacation and do those things. And it's actually more of a negative twist on it, and many times part of the reason why we're not successful in relationships is it because we haven't worked out our own stuff yet. Now relationship advice is a whole different podcast, and that comes with a whole different fee structure if you get information from me, because I got some qualifications in that area. But light joke, folks, don't take that too seriously. But really, I just make that point to say, and to try to get you all into seeing where I'm coming from, is that the things that you constantly fill your mind with, those things become real. Remember I talked about affirmations a couple of podcasts ago? Those things are real. So if you are around people who are helping you program the message that you're not going to ever find a good man, you're not going to ever find a good woman, you're not going to ever find a good anything. Just take what's out there, be selfish, get what you need to get, and keep it moving. Well, when you wind up meeting that person that you were supposed to meet, you've already filled yourself with so much negativity until there's no space for the goodness that this person could potentially bring into your life. I'm a firm believer, as it's written somewhere, that people sometimes come into our lives for a reason, for a season. Every person that you meet wasn't supposed to mean forever's attached to them. Maybe some people are supposed to be with you for a moment so that you can learn something and get something out of that experience. But if you've clouded the potentialities that exist from that experience with your own negatives, then you're not going to get everything you're supposed to get out of that situation. And that goes for relationships, that goes for your work environment, it goes for your home environment. Guys, a lot of the things that happen to us, we actually attract, be it good or be it bad. And you attract those things that you keep most at the forefront of your thought. And this is why it's so very important to learn how to amend the way that we think, to learn how to put a positive twist on those things, and trust. When you grow up in a particular situation, and I've said this before, I grew up with no lack of people who could always tell you what you could not be. Never a problem. But if you stepped out and you decided that you wanted to become something that was outside of their thinking, then you were all of a sudden set aside and ridiculed and teased and talked about and things of that nature. And that's so very much what happens here. I grew up with a lot of people who, dare I say, fell victim to what the norm became. A lot of people who decided that everybody else was selling drugs, I'm going to sell drugs too. And I can remember when I was in college, coming home to visit on the weekends, still lived in the same neighborhood, and seeing some of the guys, and we were all still cool. We grew up together, played baseball together. They decided to do one thing, I decided to do something else. That's how I look at it. I can remember one of the guys saying to me, "Man, you were supposed to be out there selling with us," selling as in selling drugs. And I just kind of smirked and laughed it off and shook my head a little bit. But in my mind, I was like, no, sir, no way. I just couldn't see that. But the reason I couldn't see that is because, and let me give kudos to those who raised me. You see, I was raised to believe that everybody went to college. My dad went to college. I'm 7 years old wearing a "My Daddy Belongs to Q Sci-Fi" t-shirt. My mother went to college. That was always what I thought you did. You graduate high school, you go to college. It really wasn't until earlier on in my high school career that I realized that that's not what everybody did. There were some who, and at the time when I was in high school, you could take a trade and you may go to become a brick mason or a plumber, what have you. Now, I really can't recall all the different trades you can go into. Carpentry, I can remember, was one of them. You could go that route so you could step out and have a usable skill when you enter the workforce. And I guess that sort of gave me an idea that, wow, everybody doesn't go to college. But the reason why going to college is what I thought you did is because that seed was planted inside my head at a very early age. And I'm very fortunate to have people who did those things for me. Now, there are many people who don't have someone to plant that seed in them. And again, these affirmations and the times in which you have to take in order to meditate, to let these things sink in and become a part of your being is what's so very important. And that is the way that you circumvent not having those seeds planted early. You can still plant those seeds now. There's no reason why you can't plant the seeds of your success right now. There's no reason that you can't at this moment, at this very moment, and that's one of the most beautiful things about life, is at any point in time, you can decide that this is not how your story is going to end. You can just make that decision that my story isn't going to end this way. I'm going to do more because I want to be more, because I want to have more. And you get into those things, but you have to step away from the fear that if everybody else is doing badly, then I'm going to feel guilty about doing badly too. Everybody else is making poor grades. Well, I don't want people to laugh at me. Well, I'm going to make poor grades too so I can fit in. Well, maybe that box you're fitting in isn't the box that your maker didn't intend for you to fulfill. Maybe there's a bigger box for you to fill than the one you're comfortable in. As it said, everything that you already have is inside your comfort zone. And all those things in life that you want and that you dream about doing, being, and becoming are outside your comfort zone. So, of course, in order for you to achieve those things, you've got to stretch yourself. You've got to think past your past. You've got to think past what others think about you, what others have labeled you as, especially when you know that label is not your definition. I can't tell you, well, I could tell you, but it sounds better. I can't tell you the things that people assumed I was without really knowing the real me. I thank God that I had a sense of who I was. I always had a sense of self, and I always knew that there was something great that I was supposed to be doing. I couldn't tell you what it was, but I just knew it. And it was the knowledge of that thing that kept me when it came to times of being, I can't even say tempted. Some things were tempting because we're young, we grow up, and there are a lot of things that come into our path that we can either choose to walk to or choose to walk away from. The thing is, when you're growing up, walking away from things that were tempting, again, made you the subject of ridicule. There are a lot of people who cannot stand to not be accepted. But someplace in my mind, was that as long as I was happy with what I was doing and who I was and what I'm about, if I got that good feeling, then I could really care less about other people. And I had to make that sort of a stronger buffer as I went forward. Because there are a lot of people that I grew up with that chose to stay inside that comfort zone. And a lot of times because they didn't know any better. Maybe they didn't have coaches like I had. Maybe they didn't have teachers like I had. Or maybe they didn't hear it the way I heard it. I don't, so it's such a fine line between success and failure. Until it's very difficult for me to set myself worlds apart in so very many ways for people I grew up with, because we all kind of had the same opportunities to a degree, but maybe it's because we all weren't made up of the same stuff, or that we didn't all process a thing in the same way, or that we didn't all think alike. Maybe it's something inside that, and maybe one day I'll actually explore what that thing is. What is it that people who grew up in somewhat similar conditions in the same neighborhood, why is it that some people died when they were 15 and 16 years old as a result of violence that was connected to the drug game? Why is it that some of them became drug addicts, let alone drug sellers, but drug addicts? Why is it that some fell victim to teen pregnancy? Why is it that some went on and got a good job and are working people and do a good thing? Why is it that some aspire to become a lot more than what they started off as? When everybody had the same starting point, but everybody doesn't have the same ending point. What really is that about? What makes up the person that travels that road the furthest, as opposed to what makes up that person who doesn't travel that road at all and who just accepts what life gives them? Fascinating to me. Maybe I'll touch on that another time. But as I approach my final descent in this episode of this podcast, I just want to hark back on what I read from. And it's just that so many times we sabotage our own success. How many times have you heard stories of college athletes who finally make it to the pros? Or better yet, you've got an athlete who's been earmarked, who's gotten a lot of media attention, who everybody sort of thinks this person is going to become a professional athlete. But when they begin matriculating towards that, you find that this person has a history of marijuana use. There's a young man now forfeited millions on top of millions of dollars because he couldn't step away from marijuana. That's through his own admission. I didn't make this up. Okay, you can look it up. You may know what I'm talking about. You can look it up for yourself. But me and my 40-plus-year-old mind is saying, yo, you telling me that marijuana is stronger than realizing that you have the ability to not only change the lives of your immediate family, but to change the lives of generations following you. Maybe it's because I'm older now. Maybe it's because I think a little different. Maybe it's because of that. But if I had an opportunity to speak to that young man, I'd have to weigh what he's doing right now versus what he could potentially become. And if what you're doing right now is going to help catapult you to where you become, then stay doing that thing. But if you're doing something right now, even when it comes to food and weight loss, if that thing that's in front of you that you're eating isn't helping you reach your goal of losing weight, find something else. Modify what you're doing. This thing is all the same. All this stuff is the same. Doesn't matter if it's relationships. Doesn't matter if it's sports. If it's athletics. Doesn't matter if it's weight loss. Doesn't matter if it's getting a better job or exploring your career options or becoming an entrepreneur, stepping out and doing your own thing, starting your own business. All this stuff is the same at the core. If what you're doing is not taking you directly towards where you want to be, you need to change what you're doing. because that's going to take you on a longer road. And not that you can't step off road and get a thing done and become what you want to be, but it's sure a longer journey. It sure makes the journey longer. But sometimes some of us need that longer journey so that we can do the learning that's involved. But think about it, guys. Your success is a lot closer than you realize. It's only a step away. But are you willing to stand strong enough in order to see it through? This is Lou Riley with another episode. Thanks for listening. If you have not again, please subscribe to my podcast. Please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all at Lou Riley Live. Lou Riley Live, LOURILEYLIVE. All scrunched together, no spaces in between, guys. Thanks for listening in. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And I look forward to interacting with you around the social networks and hearing about your progress. Take care.